Because you get the, oh, there you are
Permission to
recording.
record.
Will you stop recording and then start when we're ready?
No.
Hello, Gyi Tsakalakis.
Kelly, what's up?
We are back together for an episode.
Yes.
Yes, you have taken a step back from doing interviews on clienting and been rocking them solo. And I'm
Doing a great
excited to
job.
thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you. I'm very excited to be back doing a deep dive episode with you, though.
Deep dive. We're going deep.
Yes, we're going deep on links, links, links.
We're going into the Marianas Trench. Is that the deepest
Yes.
place on Earth? I don't know. I heard that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yes. That's the deep place in the ocean.
It's very deep. Let's go deep.
Let's go deep. So, links are kind of your most favorite subject in the world, I believe.
It's up there. Defense, football defense schemes,
Oh,
scotch, and
yep.
then coffee and links. In no particular order.
Yeah.
And philosophy. See, I've got a lot of interests,
Got a lot of
but
interests.
I love talking about links, so I'm glad to be here.
Yes. All right. So, I want to start off with you have been quoted so many, many, many times as meh links. And I just want to, I want you to explain that to people so they know what it means, because I have to admit, the first time I read it or saw it, I was like, oh, Gyi thinks that links are not, meaningless or boring or just whatever. But then when I actually asked you about it, it was quite the opposite.
On my headstone, it'll say Melinks. That is my small dent in the universe that I've spent 40 years to come to 2 words and a comma. And that really sums things up for me. But no, so Melinks. So how did that start? Well, it started because people tend to talk about a lot of stuff in the SEO world. And it's not that it's not valid, right? It's good to have a fast website. It's good to optimize meta information and add structured data and talk about site, get the site architecture right, and all of the things that provide a great experience for users and that search engines want to reward. But at the end of the day, so much of that stuff, in my view, is really table stakes. And the gatekeeper to ranking is still links. Like it, good and bad. Like it, don't like it. At the core of what Google's doing, what search engines are doing, it's still links. I challenge folks. I'd love to see this. In fact, it's currently my pinned tweet on Twitter. Is if you have examples of pages ranking for competitive queries, high intent commercial queries that don't have links to the domain, send them. I want to see it. Now, I'm not talking long tail, so don't send me your blog post that ranks for how do I blah, 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 long tail search that nobody is optimized for, nobody's really ranking for. But if you got head, especially in legal, if you've got areas where you're seeing head term category specific pages like personal injury lawyer, criminal defense lawyer with a city modifier, stuff like that, that are ranking without links, you can prove me wrong. So Mel links means all else being equal, you need links. So it's really meh to what you're saying, links. It's like
I'm gonna
shrug links.
shrug legs. I'm gonna pick on something you said a little bit, because you were like, obviously, like, link buying is or link buying. Now I'm going into what I'm going to say, so dang it. But links are, the most effective thing you can do. We see that for our clients, that link building is kind of the top of the pile. But there are a lot of things that you can do that are actually bad in regards to links. And the first one is, and so you need to be careful. And the first one is link buying. how does that work? What should people be aware of? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so link buying is a very, when we say it like that, it's a very umbrella term, right?
Yep.
Because if I pay somebody to write something on my site and it generates a bunch of links, is that link buying? Probably not. That's kind of like the, you know, and I encourage people that are exploring this neck of the internet marketing woods to check out what Google's official webmaster guidelines say about link schemes and link buying in general. And so really they mean quid pro quo, uh, here's money, put a link on your site. And here's money, put a link on your site. If that gets in front of, if that trips the right triggers or gets in front of the right people at Google, that can result in a manual action, which can be very problematic for your site's ability to rank. From all the way down to, if you're really egregious, de-indexing, so your pages won't even show up in Google at all. On the other hand, though, if we include things like quote unquote content marketing, which I don't really like that. I don't really like the word content in general, but we'll talk about that another day.
Someday we will fight about this, Gyi, on the podcast.
Good. I look forward to that day. But if we include things like spending money to get content in front of an audience that will link to it, is that link buying? Is that PR? That's fine. Now, I will say this, and we'll get into this because not all links are created equal and quality over quantity and all that stuff. But I do think that it's more now. Google is getting better at just discounting links than penalizing. And if you think this all the way through to its conclusion, if Google just saw a link and it did something to identify that it's paid, it would be very easy to quote unquote negative SEO your competition, right? So I would just buy a link, buy a public link that's sponsored back to a competitor's site, report it to Google, and ta-da, you get them a manual action. So that I think there are probably some instances that people that are more sophisticated, and we can fight about this and have experienced negative SEO. But I think in general, links that look manipulative, Google is mostly discounting those. So they're not really helping. They're not really hurting. In some instances, maybe they're helping. But the big point here is getting into how to even identify link prospects, and then like what's a valuable link, and then how to go about getting it. And I do think things like, on a local level, we do a lot of local link building. Things like being active in your community, whether it's through sponsorships or teaching or other community involvement, that maybe your business, your law firm, whatever, pays money to an organization to sponsor, participate, and that results in a link. Like that kind of link, quote unquote, link buying, I think probably is working. The ones that are just blatant sponsors, ads, it says sponsored, it's an image. I think not as effective, probably doesn't have as much value. But, you can imagine it's like, hey, we're sponsoring this event. So let me make something up. We're sponsoring this youth bake sale. Do they still do bake sales?
Yes.
Okay. You know what I used to love?
You can't do nuts. You can't do,
yes, right.
Nut free, gluten free, dairy free.
Yeah, yes. Got to be
Sugar-free.
sensitive to people's gastro and allergy issues. But bake sale. So you're say you're a law firm, you're going to sponsor your local elementary school's bake sale, and the elementary school has a newsletter, or maybe they have a spot on their site where they publish like community news, and they say, hey, we'd like to thank Kelly's law firm for sponsoring the bake sale. And they link back to your site, or they link to, maybe you have a page on your site that talks about why you're sponsoring the bake sale or whatever cause it is. I think that link has some value. I think at the very least, you're getting visibility in an audience in your local community. So there's a marketing aspect to it. And so the more you think about links in terms of relevance, and relevance meaning both topical as well as location. So hyper local links from local businesses, local community organizations, local schools, local news sites, local stuff that's real stuff. That's actually also generating traffic back to your site because people are clicking through to learn more about you, or they're just seeing that on a page. I think Google's given some value to that stuff. At least that's my experience. So is that link buying? Maybe, but I think we paint with a broad brush. Like everyone's like, don't buy links. It's like, well, yeah, don't. When you get an email from someone that's like, hey, 50 DA 47 PA 33 links for $5, like, yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, we get those all the time. Literally,
That was
like
fun.
2 to 5 times a day, we get someone contacting us to say that they can get us links or that they can get our clients links, and we're always like, nope. Because as you said, Google is getting smarter and learning to discount those bad links. But so what is good link versus bad link, I guess, is what we should probably go into next.
Yeah.
And because that's really important, and is part of the whole link buying thing, but kind of extrapolated from that, because usually the links you're buying, bad links often, if you're thinking of the what the mass buying is. But then what makes a good link? And so, as Gyi mentioned, obviously local, but really kind of the authority of the website too. Domain authority is one of the big issues that you want to look at. So, reputable website.
Yeah, I'm not big on domain authority.
You're not?
Mm-mm.
That's what all the cool kids say, Gyi.
I know some cool kids say that. I mean, it kind of depends, right? So, like, if you're a major publisher and you're like trying, so let's talk about what domain authority is supposed to replicate. So, you can go to Moz and look up domain authority. They'll tell you the details, but in essence, it's a quality measure for the domain. It's a proxy metric for domain, defining the term with the term domain authority, domain quality. But really, it's links pointing to that domain overall. And so, I think it's a 100-point scale currently. But in any event, go research domain authority. There's no doubt that high domain authority sites directionally tend to be some of the more authoritative sites on the web, right? So like google.com, probably, I don't know what it is. Let's just say it's 99. Facebook.com, very high domain authority. I think Moz, they used to, and they probably still do, but they list like the top domain authority sites on the web. Great. So from a just overall authority without regard to topical relevance and location relevance, if you're a publisher, so like let's say you're New York Times,
mm-hmm.
If you get links from high domain authority sites, I think that generally speaking, that might be a thing to help you appear more visibly in those very general searches. So, but on the other hand, if you're a local business, if you're a local law firm, and you get a link on Forbes or wherever, and it's nothing. It's just like there's a random link. Maybe I don't know. It's not topically relevant. It's nothing to do with the article on Forbes. Has nothing to do with your practice. Maybe they quoted you on something. I don't know. I don't think Google's given a lot of credit to that stuff. Well, how about this? They're giving more credit to a link from a local news site that might have a lower domain authority. They're giving more credit, in my opinion, to a local elementary school, a local nonprofit that's an actual real business organization news outlet that's local and especially if it's topically relevant. So if it's you being quoted about, say you're a personal injury lawyer, and you're talking about distracted driving and the impact of distracted driving in your local community, and you get a link back, and it's a much more lower domain authority site. That's a much more valuable link, in my view, than a link from some random high domain authority site that's not topically or locally relevant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think that people should just try to go after links on big name websites just because you want the what you think is the biggest website that you can get on. It's just I look at these things as just part of the picture. Like, you want local links. They're, especially for firms that are just looking for clients in their local area. You want local links. You want to have the website be a good and reputable website in Google's eyes that you're getting the link from, or that that is linking to you. And, it's just kind of, I look at these as all part of what you want your link building structure to look like.
Yeah, on the domain authority thing, I'm not obsessed about domain authority. I think people put too much weight on it. And I just think that if you're going to do that, if you're a publisher, go forth, try to focus on because, there's going to be a correlation between, highly trafficked websites and high domain authority websites, but that's global. It's just too big. Most small businesses, if you're not a major publisher, you're going to benefit more, especially if you're trying to rank in local pack. The local links are going to be much more effective, and it's not going to correlate to high domain authority. I'd focus on topical relevance and location relevance. And in fact, the other thing I always like to, when people hit me with how many high domain authority links you're going to get.
That's what they all sound like.
Yeah, that's my gruff domain authority voice. One of the people responsible for domain authority, or at least is a evangelist, public-facing person, as well as a very smart and very nice person, Russ Jones, who works at Moz. I always pull out the tweet where he's like, "Don't use domain authority for link building." Or I think maybe link prospecting, he says. But in any event, he acknowledges that it's not a good, in it by itself, in a vacuum, domain authority is not a good tool for link prospecting and link building, and for a lot of the reasons that we stated. But there's also there isn't a strong correlation between high domain authority links and likelihood of that site ranking. So, I can show you examples of websites that have they've gone out and done the work to get the Forbes links and the high DA links. And I can show you examples of sites, especially in local markets, that outrank those sites with a lot lower average domain authority from the links, but those links are much more topically and locally relevant. And, it stands to reason, because again, all Google does is Google's trying to sort out things. And in terms of link quality, it makes a lot more sense that a business that has topical and location relevant links, it's a more authentic link profile than a firm that just has the classic examples of high domain authority publisher sites that Google also knows people are buying links from, right? So Google has more sophisticated ways also of saying, hey, this author we know is selling links on whatever site. And they're going to devalue all the links that are published by that author. Again, they're getting better at this stuff. And so you gotta think differently about how you're prospecting the sites you want to earn links from or go out and get links from, in my opinion, than just merely domain authority.
All right. I want to kind of reverse back up a little bit for we've done kind of some deep stuff on a couple of different aspects of link building. But maybe we should have started from the beginning of more In the beginning, there were links and there were types
Sure.
of links. And these types of links were, all right, so kind of just types of links, the things that we're talking about. So I see these kind of in three different buckets. Gyi, you might have another bucket to add, but relationship building links, philanthropic links, and content based links. Oh, and I guess there is a fourth bucket of directory listings.
Yeah, I think those are some good buckets. I mean, I think there are we could come up with thousands of different examples of why people link to a page, but I think those that hits some of the majors. The last one that you said, ultimately the editorial link, right? So you write something and someone reads it and then cites what you wrote in their page. That's what Google, in theory, wants to give the highest value to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean they're definitely not all created equal.
right.
It's but because so I look at, the relationship building links as like the help a reporter out kinds
Mhm.
of things. And those are definitely not the longer term strategy. Those are more like short flash in the pan of you get an article written about you. Maybe they are longer running because maybe there's an article in local news that people are going to keep coming back to for a while or that's going to be relevant for longer. But, that's kind of what I'm putting in the bucket of relationship building.
Yeah, I mean, and those like Haro, you could, we can people can bicker about this, but those are pretty close to editorial links, right? Like reporters out there, like, hey, I'm writing on something. You're like, hey, I can help contribute to that, and they link back. Like, my view of that's pretty close to gold standard, depending on where they're a reporter, right? So if they're a reporter on like, if it's Gyi's covering something random in Chicago, not a lot of credit to that if I'm on Haro. But, if it's like, if you're a New York Times or Wall Street Journal or Chicago Tribune or local news organization and you're a reporter and you're looking for source material and experts and that kind of thing, like that's legit in my view, especially if you're getting links back from there. The other thing that I would throw in the relationship bucket is what we can quote unquote partner relationships. So like, I think in the context for us, if there are software vendors that we work with that we like and we've developed a relationship with them over time, we might submit something about how we use their software or something like that. So that's another relationship link in the context of like small businesses, law firms. If you're active with an organization, whether it's a professional organization or local organization, like that's a relationship link, right? Like you publish on their site or you get a link back from a bio or some kind of leadership page. That to me is like you've invested in a relationship with that organization or with that business, and that would fall in relationship links, which again, those are great links too.
Yeah. That's a good point. I want to go to the legal directory kinds of links because this is something that can be so great and they can be good to have, all of these online profiles which are linking to you. You are to your website, to your law firm. You're putting them on your law firm website under your bio. Um, but I also have a bit of a beef with all of these legal directory services who are, SEO companies, I should say, who are masquerading as legal directory services.
Well, that's a whole thing in of itself.
That's a whole different episode.
Let's talk about direct. So we get a lot of questions about directories.
Yes.
So I think it's worth talking about them. Directories have various purposes. So purpose one is that we know that Google uses some directory information for identifying that name, address, phone citation that goes into their local ranking sauce. So I think it's important on the majors, especially legal specific, like the major legal specific directories. You want to make sure your information is correct there. Where they have a place for you to add a link to your website, you should have that. that's again, this is in the world of links, like these are the table stakes links. Like everybody can do that. Everybody can add their profile to the major legal directories. Everybody can manage their business information on these sites. So this is not a competitive difference maker, but it's important. You should have them on the majors. But you don't need to be on every directory you can find. So if someone's selling you like, hey, we can get you posted on thousands of legal directories, it's like, come on, people. And I'll say another thing too. The other thing that I always like to make sure people consider is that while vertical specific directories, like legal directories, are very important in terms of the table stakes of directories, most of the time, I was just actually doing some research earlier today, and for category terms today, in where I was in personal injury lawyer near me and criminal defense lawyer near me, it's Yelp, Thumbtack, and some of the more general business directories. And so, again, my view of those is that's table stakes stuff, like the ones that are the free profile to fill out the free profile. But my view is you're not getting a lot more bang for your link buck by paying for sponsored listings so that you get links on more pages. I know some of the major legal directories will like pitch that. We'll say, oh, if you pay this fee, we'll add you to all these other pages. Now that might be good from a lead generation standpoint, potentially, if their directory ranks for those queries. But from a pure link value standpoint, it's diminishing returns. So it's like that's why when I talk about link acquisition, I really focus on number of linking root domains, not number of raw links, and not number of links from a particular site. So like getting 100 or 1,000 links from a domain is not going to be, it's going to be diminishing return versus like making sure you have one solid link or a few solid links from that site.
All right. Whew. I feel like people are getting so much good Gyi ranting time on this episode. I think there's just
I'm glad you think it's good.
It's good.
We'll see what other people think. Send us your feedback, people.
Yes, always send us feedback. Speaking of sending things, and I guess I won't be sending this to anyone, but I have a link in the show description for a download white paper on link building strategies.
Oh, wow. And link building white paper.
Yes, link building white paper.
Look forward to reading that.
And it will go through kind of a lot of the things we're talking about here, but also some basic email outreach recommendations and kind of the process that our team actually follows for their link building strategy. So a little insider information there.
Secret sauce.
Yes, inside baseball. One of the other things I want to make sure we go over are some, speaking of strategies for outreach, there are a few things that I have seen our team do that are effective. I've seen the experts talk about that are effective strategies that also don't necessarily cost you anything except time, which for lawyers would be high time, but maybe
time is money.
Yep. But maybe there are other people in your office or orbit who can help out with these things. But those 5 things are outreach, guest posting, unlinked mentions, link reclamation, and then, as I already mentioned, directory listings is another free strategy. But the one I want to get your feedback on, Gyi, is the unlinked mentions and link reclamation. And so, because I think this is where there may be a gold mine of stuff. But also maybe a lot of time that people could waste in doing this. And so how do you, when you're using that strategy, how do you know kind of where to put your time and then where to go, okay, I don't need to get every single link or mention there is out there in the possible internet universe back to me?
Yeah. So unlinked mentions, someone that's just so we are, make sure for folks that are not familiar with that term. It's basically someone wrote about you or your firm or your business, but didn't link back to your bio. So, that you got quoted on a news site and says, attorney Gyi Tsakalakis says, blah, blah, blah. Does that have value? Yes, it does. Does it have the same value as a link? Maybe, maybe not. You know, a lot of nuance and context there. But um, from my thinking, one, like here's some of like the no-brainer stuff. Set up Google Alerts or use something like Mention that goes out and crawls the web and looks for mentions of your name across the web, across the pages that are getting crawled. If you have a very popular name, you know, modify it with attorney or maybe the city that you're in or the name of your law firm. You know, fortunately for me, I can just do Gyi Tsakalakis, and I'm usually like one of the only people that comes up. But
Yeah, I can't do that because Kelly Street, there are a couple of Kelly streets.
Are there?
Like as an like a road, Kelly Street.
Kelly
And
Street?
apparently
Kelly
there's
Street.
one area where there are a lot of murders that happen on Kelly Street.
Don't get murdered on Kelly Street.
So, anyway.
Okay, well, so you probably want to modify your name
Yes.
in a alert. But in any event, monitor that, and then where appropriate, you know, maybe you reach out and say, hey, you know, I saw that you quoted me. I really appreciate it. Here's some other stuff I wrote about the subject. Sometimes they'll link back to it. Sometimes they won't. I don't like the hard push, like, hey, you have to link back to my site because you quoted me and otherwise don't. Like, that's not a good way to make friends. But where you can, if you can add more to the conversation, if you have a relationship with the person who published it, maybe they just need a nudge, great, get the link. But don't do that at the risk of disenfranchising the writer, because they're likely going to write about it again. And if you want to be a source, if you want to be in the conversation, if you want them to help get the word out about what you're up to, the relationship and the mention have more value than like trying to go hard on the link. So that's unlinked mentions, or some people call that I don't remember, something else they call it, but I'm blanking.
Link reclamation.
Well, link reclamation is that's kind of link. That is one way to do link reclamation, kind of. I mean, when I think of link reclamation, I think of, I had a link, or there's a link to something else, and we're going to update the link. So, you know, I think of like broken link building and link reclamation. So, or you had it, maybe you, so the, you know, the web's, another thing people don't realize, like the web is super dynamic. It's like always changing. And so like a link you got today might not be there tomorrow. And so monitor, that's why managing and monitoring your link profile, I think it has some value. So a link goes down. So when I think of classic link reclamation to me is, you had a link, the link goes down. How do you go back and get the link? And maybe that's nudging the publisher of the previous page to update, to write something new, or to you contribute something new. You know, if it's a guest post, it's like maybe your guest post got moved into an archive or something and it's no longer getting crawled or whatever. And then maybe you need to go back and try to do something to reclaim the link. Maybe it's, you know, some people might disagree with if this falls in the link reclamation bucket, but I think of broken link building. So, you know, you find something on you have a prospective site that you're trying to get a link from, and it's linking to something that's no longer active. It's the link's broken, and then you contact the site and say, hey, you're linking to this, it's broken, I have a resource over here, update your link. That's more classic broken link building, but I think, you know, that's in some ways it's reclamation, because you're claiming the link that is now broken. You know, I suppose you can call trying to get a link from a mention reclamation, but I think of that as more of like, reclamation means like you know, to me it's like, I think reclaiming. So it's like, I had a link, it went down, why did it go down, how do we get a new link back? That's the classic reclamation thing for me.
Yeah. So, what do you think the future of link building looks like?
Much like it has always looked. So I know a lot. So people, you know, content marketing, super hot, so hot. It's content marketing. All you do is just make great content, put it on your site, and people.
That's not what content marketing means.
Well, in the context of SEO, a lot of people talk about that. So, you know, you just push publish, right? You just publish stuff. It's great. People link to it. Nope.
No. The internet is
Sometimes.
way too busy. There
Yeah.
is way too much going on in the world, and there is so much noise that just putting stuff out is not going to result
Hey,
anymore.
yeah, if you're one of the lucky people that can just publish something and people link to it because you're the expert, which again, you should aspire to be. I think everybody should aspire to be that. I think that's a part of the strategy. But if you put all your eggs in that bucket, I think your competition is probably going to be able to outlink you. So you got to put stuff on your website that people want to link to. There's a lot more nuance to this though too, especially like one of the things I always talk about is like putting case summaries or even like the raw PDF of a uh, important decision or opinion or change in law, legislative updates, that kind of stuff, and hosting that stuff on your site, getting it indexed, and then when journalists go to search your hosted version of that, shows up in the results and they end up linking to your site. That's like that's an example of like, is that content marketing? Like, I suppose it is. Like, you're putting stuff on your site, they're linking to it, but things get a little bit more nuanced than just like, I wrote something awesome and everybody loves it. And to me, 80% of the work is marketing the content. So it's getting the content in front of people who are actually ready, willing, and able to link to it versus this idea of just click publish and then it's going to go viral on linking. So outreach, the hard work of link building is to spend the time researching the prospect, do the work to understand who they are. It's like sales, right? Like, you got to go out and you got to be like, hey, I'm following you. I've been reading your stuff. Like, don't make the hard sell. If you're coming out, these people that are like sending these emails right out of the gate being like, hey, read your post, link to me. It's like, what? It's like, you wouldn't sell something that way. So there's a lot more nurture. Link building is nurturing. It's, I think for most people that understand like, high-end business development, it's much more like building those kind of rapport with people, but that's where the work is. Like, yes, you need to have stuff on your site that's linkable. But I can tell you that there are tons of law firm websites that have very unsophisticated content pages, practice area pages. There's nothing on there that you read and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to link to this. They have a lot of links because somebody's doing the work to do the PR work, the journalism work, the outreach work, the relationship work, all that stuff to market those pages. And so it becomes less about the actual page itself and more about the, quote unquote, reputation and relationship of that firm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's all part of a larger strategy. And you can't just rely on posting things and having people want to share them anymore because there's way too much out there.
Yeah. And some lawyers can, right? High profile, some like Bill Marler comes to mind. Like, he writes something about some kind of new food poisoning or outbreak, pathogen, whatever. And all of a sudden it gets picked up by the news and people are covering it. The CDC's linking to it. CNN's covering it. Like, great. That's awesome if you're that. And you should work to aspire to position yourself as that kind of expert. And like, no doubt. Same thing with SCOTUS blog, right? Like, they're the go-to source. That's a long-term strategy for aspiring to be that. But in the short term, like, I can tell you, on our team, sometimes it's just a matter of like, hey, we want to get a link from X state website, like actually the actual state's website. They have they have a broken link to some other resource that's no longer valid. We update the resource and they update the link, and now you got a link from the state, a real like legitimate state website, super authoritative, probably has a high domain authority too. So throw that in there.
There you go.
And especially if it's a legal section of the site, topically relevant, geographically relevant, high authority site, very valuable link, and has nothing to do. I mean, that's not fair. It has something to do with the content, right? Like, you had to update something on your site to make it relevant for that link, but it's not like breaking news or the most beautiful like 10x content thing that you've ever seen in your life that attracted the link. was literally nudging the person that's the webmaster at the site, following up with them, inquiring, and doing that link. So
Awesome. All right. I think we've said all that we should say today about links.
I was just getting warmed up.
I can tell. I can see the motor running.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you, Gyi, for all of your glorious opinions on links.
My pleasure. Thanks for
And
having me.
thanks for having me. That's funny because your face is on the cartoon of our image.
I know that's the most handsome image ever created of me.
Yes, and of me as well.
Huh.
And as we mentioned earlier, if you would like access to the link white paper that we have built out in relation to this episode, just click the link in the episode description or on the blog post on AttorneySync.com for this episode. And as always, thank you for listening, everyone. And feel free to rate, share, review in Apple Podcasts, and let us know what you think of the episode.
Yeah, send us those examples of content ranking without links. Bye, Kelly.
Bye. You gotta hit stop recording.